So, today we're talking about Kimberly Crenshaw's idea of intersectionality and how her article, Mapping the Margins, connects to her TED Talk, The Urgency of Intersectionality. Our goal is to show how overlapping identities like race, gender, class, and immigration status shape people's experiences in ways that systems often fail to recognize.
Intersectionality is the idea that discrimination doesn't happen one category at a time. Women of color experience racism and sexism together. And Crenshaw argues that our society doesn't have the right frames to see that they overlap.
Now, communications experts tell us that when facts do not fit with the available frames, people have a difficult time incorporating new facts into their way of thinking about a problem. These women's names have slipped through our consciousness because there are no frames for us to see them, no frames for us to remember them, no frames for us to hold them.
The missing frame is exactly why intersectionality matters. It helps us see what single-issue approaches leave out. And also, that is why Crenshaw created the 3 frameworks we're using today to give us the frames we've been missing.
The first framework is structural intersectionality. Crenshaw describes structural intersectionality as the way institutions create barriers that uniquely affect women of color. In the reading, she uses the example of immigrant women trapped in abusive marriages because their legal status depended on staying with their abusers. Their experience isn't just about sexism, it's sexism plus immigration law, plus language barriers, plus racial discrimination. And this connects directly to the TED Talk, when Crenshaw asked the audience to stand or sit based on which victims they recognize. Almost nobody knows the black women's names compared to black men's.
Only one thing distinguishes the names that you know from the names that you don't know: gender. I've done it to women's rights organizations. I've done it with civil rights groups. I've done it with professors. I've done it with students. I've done it with psychologists. I've done it with sociologists. I've done it even with progressive members of Congress. And everywhere, the awareness of the level of police violence that black women experience is exceedingly low.
That moment shows structural erasure. Systems track violence against black men or violence against women, but rarely violence against black women. So their stories literally go missing.
As I said at the beginning, if we can't see a problem, we can't fix a problem. Together, we've come together to bear witness to these women's lost lives. But the time now is to move from mourning and grief to action and transformation.
The second framework is political intersectionality, which looks at how women of color are positioned between movements that should support them, but often don't. So Crenshaw notes that feminist politics usually centers white women, while anti-racist movements often center men of color. So when women of color face violence, both movements may unintentionally push their issues aside.
Now, you might ask, well, why does a frame matter? I mean, after all, an issue that affects black people and an issue that affects women, wouldn't that necessarily include black people who are women and women who are black people? Well, the simple answer is that this is a trickle-down approach to social justice, and many times it just doesn't work. Without frames that allow us to see how social problems impact all the members of a targeted group, many will fall through the cracks of our movements, left to suffer in virtual isolation.
What political intersectionality shows is that you can't fix sexism by mainly focusing on white women, and you also can't fix racism by mainly focusing on black men. Women of color need solutions that are centered specific to their experiences. The third framework is representational intersectionality, which focuses on how cultural images and media narratives shape whose experiences matter. Crenshaw argues that stories of women of color become often distorted, stereotyped, or ignored. That's why I think the Say Her Name portion of the TED Talk is so important. It directly challenges this representational eraser by naming Black women killed by the police, those names that most of those people in the building had never even heard of.
I'd like those of you who are able to join us in saying these names as loud as you can, randomly, disorderly. Let's create a cacophony of sound to represent our intention to hold these women up, to sit with them, to bear witness to them, to bring them into the light.
So across these three frameworks, structural, political, and representational, Crenshaw shows that intersectionality is essential for understanding the realities women of color face. When we fail to look at how identities overlap, we erase their experiences, and that eraser has life and death consequences.
Say her name.
So, intersectionality gives us the tools to finally see what has been missing and to push for solutions that don't leave anyone behind. Thank you for watching.